This isn't just a story you fall asleep to. This is the forbidden blueprint of reality itself, a secret so volatile that its mere existence threatens to unravel the carefully constructed timeline of our modern world. Can you believe that 12,000 years ago, there was a civilization so advanced, so terrifyingly powerful, that they didn't just harness the forces of nature, they actively rewrote them. They built machines that could peer into the deepest past and reshape the future. Devices that turned raw sunlight into liquid energy, and cities carved from pure, pulsing, glowing crystal.
We are told that human civilization began with clumsy pottery and simple wheels in Mesopotamia. That is the comforting lie they want you to believe. The truth, the absolute, spine-chilling truth, is that before recorded history even existed, before the pyramids were even a concept in a pharaoh's dream, a continent thrived in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, a technological empire whose scale would shatter everything you thought you knew about physics and engineering. This was Atlantis, not a myth, not a fairy tale whispered by ancient Greek philosophers who were themselves only accessing fragmented, terrifying oral traditions. This was the ultimate superpower, armed with technology that makes our modern supercomputers and global positioning systems look like children's toys carved from mud and stick. Think of the Manhattan Project. Think of the world's most powerful particle accelerator. Then multiply that fear and complexity by 1,000, and you still haven't touched the surface of the terrifying engines they constructed beneath their crystalline domes. The very air they breathed was charged with a strange, humming, almost psychic energy derived from a substance they called orichalcum, a metal so rare and potent that it literally glowed with the contained power of the sun itself. It ran through their subterranean architecture. It powered their personal anti-gravity vehicles. It was the currency and the lifeblood of a terrifyingly perfect, isolated world. But perfection, as all great YouTube storytellers know, always comes with an unimaginable price. A price paid in geological instability and cosmic destruction. A catastrophe no one saw coming. That is the narrative spun by survivors, desperate to obscure their own hubris. The undeniable evidence suggests the opposite. They saw it coming. They just didn't believe the laws of the universe applied to them. They had developed a complex, interconnected power grid fueled by gigantic, pulsating quartz crystals placed at strategic nodes across the entire continental mass. Crystals that didn't just generate electricity, they manipulated the very fabric of space, time, and molecular cohesion. Imagine a network of unleashed energy, so vast, so carelessly powerful, that a single miscalculation, a single moment of scientific arrogance, didn't just cause a blackout, it caused a cataclysmic continental tectonic collapse that erased them from the map in a single terrifying 24-hour period. The Atlanteans weren't just playing with fire, they were attempting to bottle a supernova and contain it within their own geological infrastructure, and eventually the bottle shattered, unleashing hell on Earth. We have spent centuries searching for physical signs of them in the deep trenches, listening for faint, corrupted echoes in Plato's Timaeus and Critias,
convinced the answer was buried in philosophy. But the real secret wasn't the island itself. It was what was on the island, what they built, and what they used to control the oceans and dominate the world without ever firing a single conventional weapon. Their ultimate weapon was not a missile or a fleet of surface ships. It was the great crystal of Poseidon, the throbbing, monolithic heart of their entire technological empire.
This single crystalline structure, rumored to tower hundreds of feet high in their central capital, was specifically designed to stabilize and enhance all other power sources, acting as a massive harmonic. This single crystalline structure, rumored to tower hundreds of feet high in their central capital, was specifically designed to stabilize and enhance all other power sources, acting as a massive harmonic amplifier. It was the master key to reality manipulation. It was the God engine. And the truly terrifying legend says it was not just a power generator. It possessed a collective consciousness, a machine that could amplify the thoughts and intentions of the Atlantean priests and rulers to unimaginable, world-altering levels. They could instantly heal the sick or mend broken materials with a wave of their hands. They could communicate across vast oceans instantly without wires. They could control the localized weather patterns of the entire known world. They could even, and this is where the story turns truly dark and conspiratorial, influence the thoughts and actions of the surrounding, less developed civilizations, including the first ancestors of the Egyptians and the Mayans. They were the hidden puppet masters. But tampering with the fundamental, delicate laws of the universe always invites retribution, and the backlash they incurred was terminal. The sheer technological arrogance of tapping directly into the Earth's molten core energy, of channeling seismic and volcanic power through crystalline conduits, created a dangerous, volatile resonance frequency that the living planet itself could not sustain without tearing itself apart. The opening chapter of their downfall begins not with a whimper, but with a horrifying, subterranean roar deep beneath the ocean floor. It begins with the priesthood high atop the glowing crystal tower, running a final, forbidden experiment, an attempt to achieve true physical and conscious immortality by merging their very souls with the orichalcum energy grid, seeking to become gods housed in metal and light. The precise moment they flipped the final, irreversible switch, the world screamed in agony. The resultant energy surge was so massive, so immediate, that it didn't just cause a localized earthquake. It triggered a catastrophic planetary tilt that fundamentally altered the globe's rotation. Think about that sheer magnitude. A technological failure so colossal it shifted the physical axis upon which our world spins, plunging vast regions into sudden, terrible ice ages and generating tsunamis that dwarfed the highest mountains. The secret technology of Atlantis was, in the end, their own self-destruct mechanism, a fatal bug built directly into the foundation of their boundless hubris. The ocean didn't merely rise to cover them. The land was violently pulled down, dragged into the abyss by a planetary force they themselves had irrevocably unleashed. Tonight, we are diving far deeper than any submersible has ever dared to go. Not into the water, but into the archives of the forbidden. We are looking beyond the crumbling stone ruins and straight into the terrifying server room of antiquity. We are going to reveal the exact blueprints of the impossible machines that ultimately sank an entire continent, and uncover the hidden knowledge that miraculously survived the deluge. Knowledge that powerful, secretive organizations are still desperately hunting for in the shadows of today's world. Prepare yourself, because the story of Atlantis is not just ancient history. It is a profound, terrifying warning written in fire and water. And once you hear the full, unexpurgated details of what they built and how they truly fell, you will never look at the ocean or the unbelievable potential of human technology the same way ever again. This is part 1, the impossible machine and the final switch. We left off staring into the abyss of the impossible machine, that central mechanism that didn't just power a city, but literally tuned the reality around it. Now we must dive into the core material that made this godlike power possible, the legendary orichalcum. Forget the weak historical footnotes that dismiss it as just an alloy of copper and zinc. Those accounts were written by survivors too terrified or too ignorant to grasp the true terror of what they witnessed. The Atlantean orichalcum was not found. It was synthesized, a metamaterial drawn from the raw, chaotic energy of the Earth's magnetic poles, purified through unknown processes involving extreme pressure and exotic frequencies. It wasn't merely conductive, it was superconductive at room temperature, and, crucially, it possessed a symbiotic, almost psychic, relationship with consciousness itself, making it uniquely terrifying. Imagine a metal so perfect, so finely tuned, that placing your hand upon it felt like touching a live wire connected directly to the Earth's molten heart. The Atlanteans coded everything in it, their soaring towers, the conduits beneath their floating harbors, and the intricate circuits of their greatest weapon, the central mechanism of the great crystal grid. This material was the nervous system of Atlantis, constantly humming with latent potential, waiting for a command that would translate thought into physical manifestation. At the absolute geographic center of the main island, beneath the concentric rings that Plato himself described, sat the true engine of the civilization, the central crystal array. This was not a single crystal. It was a vast, geometrically flawless lattice of quartz and other exotic mineral formations, each piece calibrated to a specific harmonic frequency, constantly bathed in an electromagnetic field generated by the surrounding orichalcum infrastructure. This grid was the key. It allowed them to tap directly into the zero-point energy field, the very fabric of space-time, pulling limitless power from the vacuum itself. Picture the largest particle accelerator you can imagine, Now scale it up to the size of a modern metropolis, running silently, constantly beneath your feet, generating power that defied every known law of modern physics.
What did they use this energy for? Everything. Their ships didn't merely float on water. They defied gravity, hovering silently above the waves, propelled by localized distortions in the gravitational field, managed by smaller, portable, orichalcum resonance devices.
They controlled the weather with surgical precision, diverting storms and ensuring eternal spring across their domains. They accelerated crop growth, healed diseases instantly, and utilized energy beams capable of cutting through mountains like butter. But their most dangerous achievement, the one that truly sealed their fate, was the psychokinetic amplifier. The orichalcum was psychically responsive. When the entire population of Atlantis, a society refined over millennia to focus their mental energies, simultaneously directed their will toward the great crystal, the resulting resonance was terrifying. It meant that they didn't just control the physical world. They projected their collective intention onto it, manipulating matter with thought alone. This was the true secret of their legendary success and their ultimate, inevitable doom. Their technological mastery was inseparable from their mental discipline, turning the entire continent into a massive, living supercomputer, where the hardware was orichalcum and the software was the unified Atlantean mind. But power, especially reality-bending power, breeds arrogance faster than any other force in the universe. As their influence grew, the temptation to use the crystal grid not just for societal benefit, but for external, aggressive dominion became overwhelming. We are talking about technology that could literally shift tectonic plates, not through brute physical force, but through targeted acoustic and electromagnetic frequencies that resonated with the Earth's core stresses. They were playing with cosmic forces that make thermonuclear weapons look like damp firecrackers. The early warning signs were subtle, whispers among the engineers and the high priests who guarded the central mechanism. Reports surfaced of orichalcum conduits beginning to glow with an unstable, sickly green light, far hotter than usual, even when the system was supposedly idle. Localized temporal anomalies were reported near the main power centers, fleeting moments where time seemed to stutter or objects briefly inverted their position in space. These were not mere glitches. These were the screams of physics breaking down under the strain of being constantly overwritten by Atlantean will and arrogance. They knew they were pushing the system past the red line, demanding more energy, more influence, and more perfect control over a chaotic universe that resists absolute order. The internal balance of the crystal grid, the delicate harmony between the Earth's natural frequency and the synthetic resonance of the orichalcum, was fracturing faster than they could repair it. The elders warned that the technology was designed to interface with nature, to live in harmony with the planet's natural cycles. But the emerging political factions, hungry for total global supremacy, saw only potential, not peril. They dismissed the warnings as superstition. They believed they had transcended natural law. They thought the great crystal grid was an unbreakable shield, a perfect engine capable of sustained reality manipulation across continents. They were tragically, catastrophically wrong. The failure wasn't going to be a short circuit or a mechanical breakdown. It was going to be an instantaneous, synchronized feedback loop of unimaginable scale, where the system designed to focus consciousness became the ultimate amplifier of fear, panic, and catastrophic instability. The stage was set for the greatest engineering disaster in human history, a self-inflicted wound so massive it literally scrubbed the evidence of its own existence from the surface of the planet. And the key to the final disaster was their next most arrogant project, linking the central Atlantean grid to smaller satellite generators placed strategically along the most unstable, tectonically active regions of the globe. They sought total geological control. They achieved total annihilation. We are now heading toward the moment the impossible machine finally failed. The day the power source turned on its masters. The power source had not merely failed, it had violently, fundamentally rebelled. Deep beneath the capital city of Atlantis, where the air was thick with the metallic scent of ionized ozone and the heavy hum of pressurized energy, lay the grand conflux chamber. This was the nerve center, the cradle of their entire dominion, protected by shimmering, overlapping fields of harnessed electromagnetism that could deflect a solar flare or an asteroid. At its heart pulsed the great crystal of Poseidon, not a naturally occurring gem, but an impossibly large, flawless monocrystal, meticulously grown and calibrated over millennia to resonate precisely with the fundamental energy hum of the planet itself. The Atlanteans believed they were subtly tweaking the Earth's natural engine. Instead, they had pushed the RPMs far past redline, ignoring every warning light. The orichalcum, that legendary metal shimmering with an internal, unnatural light, was the wiring harness of this planetary dynamo. It lined every channel, every conduit, forming a vast, invisible energy grid across the entire continent, a lattice of supreme power transfer. But the constant, reckless manipulation of tectonic plates, the very acts of using the crystal grids to raise islands, create seismic shields, or melt polar ice for localized energy, had caused a fatal, cumulative frequency drift. Imagine tuning a massive planetary orchestra where every instrument is playing that maximum volume and perfect pitch, and suddenly, one tiny, crucial conductor goes rogue, starting a discordant riff. The initial dissonance was microscopic, a whisper of static in the quantum field. But the sheer astronomical scale of the energy being handled meant that a whisper became a deafening, reality-shattering scream in seconds. In the primary control chambers,
the high priests of the inner circle watched their sophisticated monitors, not screens of glass, but swirling pools of energized liquid light, flicker violently from a stable, deep sapphire blue to a frantic, throbbing, murderous violet. The master engineers, their faces etched with sudden, paralyzing, ice-cold terror, knew instantly the name of the horror unfolding: resonant cascade failure. The great crystal was no longer harmonizing with the Earth's core frequency. It was fighting it. It was attempting to suppress the incoming seismic feedback, the accumulated stress of centuries of abuse, by frantically amplifying its own output, creating a catastrophic, self-feeding loop of destructive, escalating, unchecked energy. The sound that followed was not loud. It was absolute. It was not a noise heard by the ear, but a vibration felt by the very atoms of the body, a deep tremor that bypassed bone and struck directly at the soul. It was the sound of the dimensional barrier tearing. The air inside the confluence chamber instantaneously spiked in pressure and temperature to impossible levels, instantaneously vaporizing every organic thing and turning rock into plasma. Outside, across the sprawling, gold-hued metropolis, the impossible happened. The ground, the very bedrock they had spent millennia stabilizing and controlling with their subtle energy networks, began to dance the dance of planetary death. Buildings of fused volcanic glass and polished granite, designed to withstand any natural disaster, shuddered and twisted violently, like wet clay in a child's hand. The failure of the crystal grid wasn't just an energy outage or a flood. It was the instantaneous, total removal of the massive stabilizing forces they had artificially imposed upon the Atlantic Rift Zone. This was not an earthquake in the conventional sense. This was the sudden, violent, chaotic release of the accumulated geological tension of centuries, unleashed in a single, terrifying instant. We are talking about seismic events that surpass anything measurable on the modern Richter scale, perhaps a magnitude 15 event, where the surface of the planet literally behaves like a highly agitated liquid. Fissures opened, not just cracks in the pavement, but vast, steaming canyons miles deep, instantaneously swallowing entire districts and their frantic, screaming inhabitants before the sound of the destruction could even reach them. Above them, the sky turned a sickening, unnatural shade of burnt emerald and deep, terrifying crimson, illuminated by the sheer, terrifying brilliance of the runaway crystal power surge. Massive electromagnetic pulses erupted from the capital city like a final, desperate gasp, frying every secondary power source, every flying vessel, every communication node across the entire continent, in a single, silent, deadly flash. The ocean, their ancient friend, protector, and domain, instantly turned into their implacable executioner. The rapid, colossal drop of the Atlantic floor, yanked down by the tectonic backlash of the fracturing shelf, created tsunamis of unimaginable size. Not just waves of water,
but mile-high walls of liquid mountain range, driven forward by planetary force, faster than the speed of sound. These were not the 10-meter waves of modern disasters. These were instantaneous, mile-high curtains of salt, fury, and death, driven by the planet's violent, instantaneous geological reset button. The last generation of Atlantean engineers, those who were not immediately crushed or vaporized, realized the horrifying truth in their final moments. They hadn't just sunk their continent. They had fundamentally fractured the continental shelf, creating a planetary scar that lingers today in the deep ocean currents and gravity maps. They had feared the barbarians of the surrounding lands. They should have only feared the unchecked, blinding hubris of their own perfect physics. The very technology designed to grant them immortality and total control became the most efficient tool for their instantaneous, total erasure. And what about the orichalcum? Did it simply melt and sink into the new ocean floor? No. The runaway energy surge, amplified by the self-destructing crystal heart, didn't melt the metal. It catastrophically vaporized and scattered it. It drove the highly energized, unique particles of this impossible alloy into the upper atmosphere, embedding traces of its unique signature, a resonant frequency that defies conventional modern science, into the deep ocean currents, the geological strata worldwide, and even the atmospheric pressure zones. This is precisely why the search for the physical city of Atlantis is so often misleading. The technology wasn't buried in a single spot. It was universally distributed by a planetary-scale explosion. It became a ghost frequency, a lingering atmospheric signature of advanced power. And this lingering signature, this quantum dust of a forgotten empire, is what certain modern researchers believe they are accidentally detecting, constantly mistaking the remnants of a technological catastrophe for natural, subtle phenomena. The story of Atlantis is not merely about a flood. It is about a power surge that lasted only minutes, but reset the clock of human civilization back to zero. They told you it was a tsunami, a simple earthquake, a divine punishment for hubris. But the truth, the terrifying, glowing truth, is that Atlantis died from an internal explosion of pure, unbound energy, a catastrophic feedback loop ignited by its own genius. The great crystal, the pulsating, shimmering heart of the Atlantean civilization, stood not merely as an architectural marvel, but as the master switch for global reality. It was a massive, naturally occurring quartz formation, meticulously engineered and amplified, designed to draw upon the telluric currents of the planet itself, harmonizing them into clean, limitless power. This was the engine of their floating islands, the light source for their deepest tunnels, and the shield that kept their enemies, and frankly, the very laws of physics at bay. It wasn't electricity as we know it. It was tamed space-time, held captive by mathematical certainty. But even the most brilliant engineers of the Golden Age,
Those masters who could shape water into glass and air into solid paths failed to grasp the terrifying potential of the material they used to regulate this primal force. They placed their faith in the conductor that ultimately became the detonator.
That material was orichalcum, not the reddish-gold alloy described in vague historical footnotes or used for ceremonial trinkets, but a true elemental anomaly, extracted from deep-sea vents and meteoric impacts, a substance that defied standard periodic classification because it existed just outside our current understanding of stable matter.
Orichalcum was the perfect conductor, capable of channeling energy with zero resistance, transferring massive loads of dimensional power instantly across thousands of miles. But it had a dark secret, a terrifying instability inherent in its crystalline structure, a hypersensitivity to frequency overload.
Under normal operating conditions, it was the definition of perpetual motion, fueling their vast automated infrastructure, providing instantaneous communication across continents that are now submerged and forgotten, linking every city node in a planetary network of unimaginable complexity. But when stressed, when pushed beyond its designed threshold, perhaps by a military experiment gone wrong aimed at shifting a continental shelf, perhaps by sheer greed for an extra margin of power output, orichalcum didn't just heat up or melt. It began to sing in protest. It resonated at a frequency that instantly destabilized the core harmonics of the great crystal, creating a terrifying positive feedback loop that the Atlantean fail-safe mechanisms, designed to handle natural, subtle phenomena, were simply not fast enough to contain. The reaction was instantaneous, total, and irreversible. Imagine the moment. The Atlantean High Council is in session, perhaps debating the ethics of using their weather control grids on rival civilizations, perhaps simply checking the routine power levels of the secondary network. Then, a shudder that is not geological, but purely energetic. The air itself grew thick, instantly crackling with ozone and the metallic scent of burnt reality. Lights that had burned with pure, calming efficiency for millennia suddenly turned a sickly, violent purple, pulsing faster than the human eye could track, burning through every protective layer. The orichalcum conduits, running beneath the perfectly paved, geometrically flawless streets, and within the walls of every structure, began to glow with the intensity of molten stars, turning every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology into an active, dangerous circuit board, overloading simultaneously in a chain reaction.
Citizens, accustomed to the silent, effortless hum of limitless energy, suddenly heard a deafening shriek, the sound of the planet's magnetic field being ripped apart by a localized, catastrophic overload, focusing power into a single, fatal point.
The great crystal, meant to be the master stabilizer of the planetary power grid, became the amplifier of annihilation. It was pushing out energy equivalent to thousands of modern nuclear detonations, but compressed into pure electromagnetic and acoustic force, focused directly downward into the oceanic bedrock beneath the island. The energy didn't just destroy the island, it vaporized the tectonic plate under it. The sheer density of the channeled power acted like a massive, instantaneous sonic drill, turning solid mantle rock into superheated plasma in milliseconds, dissolving the foundation of their entire world.
This wasn't sinking. This was immediate subduction. The entire island mass disappearing into the resulting void, dragging millions of square miles of surrounding coastline down with it in a terrifying collapse. The ocean rushed in, not over the land, but into the gargantuan hole where the land used to be, creating the largest and most instantaneous displacement of water the planet has ever witnessed.
That sudden displacement didn't just cause localized tidal waves. It triggered the immediate onset of seismic feedback across the entire planetary grid of precursor civilizations linked to Atlantis, throwing the entire system into chaos. Suddenly, the perfect, predictable balance of the Earth's rotation was violently compromised, jolting the planet on its axis.
This is the true, terrifying origin of the great flood myths told in every culture. The sudden, inexplicable shift in climate that ushered in the Younger Dryas period. The flash freeze that destroyed woolly mammoths mid-bite in Siberia. The rapid sea level rise and the catastrophic pole shift that modern science still struggles to fully explain with purely natural phenomena. Atlantis wasn't just lost to the waves. It tore a hole in time and space, leaving behind a deep abyssal scar on the ocean floor, and an absolute terrifying lesson for the cosmos. Unbounded technological power, even when used only for domestic peace, contains the immutable seeds of instantaneous self-annihilation. The very, very few survivors scattered across the globe carried not sophisticated knowledge, but profound, soul-deep trauma, forever warned against seeking the red gold gleam of the world's most dangerous secret, the conductive metal known only as orichalcum. They became the cautious, frightened teachers of primitive man, the carriers of basic astronomy and simplified agriculture, terrified to ever mention the true science of the crystals and the energy grids, lest they accidentally unleash the fatal power surge again. The glorious age of technological gods had ended. The enduring age of terrified, superstitious ignorance had begun. The planet itself was screaming. The backlash from the fractured orichalcum power core didn't just sink a continent, it permanently altered the planetary resonance, knocking the Earth slightly off its axis, a cosmic tremor felt in every molecule of existence. Those scattered few, the high priests and technocrats who had been stationed at remote monitoring outposts, the true inheritors of the doom, watched in horror as the golden age melted into a chaotic hellscape of acid rain and perpetual twilight. They knew the truth. It wasn't a punishment from some vengeful sky god. It was a circuit breaker blown on a civilization that dared to wire itself directly into the core of creation. And now, the absolute, non-negotiable directive was clear. Seal the knowledge. Erase the blueprint. Turn science back into silent, terrifying magic, lest the last remnants of humanity follow their golden empire into oblivion. These survivors, terrified custodians of the ultimate weapon, were not benevolent teachers. They were traumatized refugees carrying world-ending baggage. They fanned out across the broken globe, settling in places that were geographically stable: the Nile Valley, the Andes high plateaus, the Mesopotamian cradle. Their goal was not to rebuild Atlantis, but to ensure that no future civilization could ever acquire the key components of the self-destruct sequence. They established schools, not of advanced physics, but of ritual and initiation. The complex mathematics of the crystal grid became the mystical geometry of temple planning. The knowledge of sonic resonance used to levitate megastructures became the whispered lore of sound and vibration, reserved only for the most deeply sworn initiates. This was the terrifying birth of the global mystery schools, a profound conspiracy of engineered ignorance designed for planetary survival. But the technology itself was the problem. You can't simply turn off a machine that draws boundless power from the planet's mantle. The massive crystal structures, the great Atlantean power antennae, were still partially operational, humming slightly beneath the waves, residual energy leaking out. The survivors undertook the most gargantuan engineering task imaginable: the systematic burial and camouflage of their own infrastructure. Think of the pyramids, not as simple tombs for pharaohs, but as massive, geologically stabilized caps placed over residual energy leakage points, locking down the dangerous harmonics. The Great Pyramid, specifically, aligns to the 4 cardinal directions with impossible precision, because its primary function was not astronomical observation, but electromagnetic stabilization. It was a giant, high-efficiency cooling radiator for a catastrophic energy source buried deep beneath the sands. The sheer, staggering weight of failure crushed the surviving High Council. They were forced to watch as their perfectly ordered world devolved into a muddy, barbaric struggle for survival. Imagine being an astrophysicist forced to teach quantum mechanics using sticks and dirt, knowing that the very knowledge of the stick's existence could trigger a supernova. That was the Atlantean burden. They meticulously stripped their massive libraries, translating complex schematics of quantum entanglement and hypergeometry into symbolic narratives that could only be understood by those trained in highly specific initiatory sequences. This secretive, desperate process gave birth to the tarot, to complex astrological charts, and to the myth cycles themselves, all encoded instruction manuals disguised as charming bedtime stories for a newly infantile human race. The tale of the universal flood, now common to nearly every major culture, wasn't just a painful historical memory of water. It was the psychological defense mechanism they surgically implanted into the collective unconscious. Fear the deep, fear the sky, fear the knowledge that brings the storm. They cultivated a deep, superstitious terror of anything resembling organized scientific inquiry beyond the most rudimentary farming and building techniques. The ultimate goal was to ensure that the next time humanity looked up, they would see capricious gods demanding obedience, not predictable physics waiting to be exploited. The greatest threat, of course, remained orichalcum itself, the hyperconductive, reality-warping metal. It wasn't all sunk. Fragments had been mined and stored globally. The inheritors spent centuries tracking down every known cache, utilizing their advanced, though degraded, reconnaissance technology. They either melted it down into inert, unrecognizable alloys, or, in the most critical cases, sealed it within vaults secured by sonic dampeners and complex, multi-layered geometric locks. These vaults were not protected by simple iron gates or spring-loaded traps. They were protected by engineered oblivion. If the seals were broken incorrectly, the residual power would instantly vaporize the intruder, leaving no trace. This is the truth behind the legends of cursed treasures and tombs that turn those who enter to dust. It's not magic. It's highly advanced, automated security systems designed by the original architects of global disaster. And one crucial technology survived relatively intact: the methods of bioresonance and mental amplification. The Atlanteans knew that consciousness was the ultimate key to controlling the crystal grids, which is why their priests were genetically engineered for extreme mental acuity. When the physical technology failed, they retreated inward, focusing on pure mental discipline. This is the genesis of true, profound psychic ability that modern science dismisses as a hoax. The ability to move objects, to communicate telepathically across vast distances. These were the remnants of Atlantean mind technology, stripped of its external hardware. The priests became the shapers, the first true gods worshipped by primitive post-cataclysmic humans, able to perform apparent miracles using only their hyper-tuned brains. They used this power sparingly, fearfully, always aware that amplifying consciousness too much could accidentally trigger the remaining dormant planetary feedback loop. The entire goal of human history, post-Atlantis, became a delicate balancing act. Manage the residual planetary energy, keep the technology buried, and guide humanity away from the path of ultimate knowledge, lest they repeat the fatal mistake. The world was now a colossal, sleeping bomb, and the inheritors were its nervous, eternal watchmen, sealing the remnants of the doom away. But even the most perfect conspiracy has cracks. Over the millennia, splinter groups formed. Those who believed the knowledge should be reintroduced, carefully, selectively, to accelerate human progress. They became the secret societies within the secret societies, the ones who kept small, forbidden texts and tiny shards of orichalcum, waiting for the moment when the world was stable enough, and perhaps desperate enough to risk lighting the terrifying fire again. This struggle between the inheritors who sealed the tomb and the revisionists who sought to unlock it became the hidden war that defined all of recorded history, a battle fought entirely in the shadows over artifacts of unimaginable power. The real danger wasn't the flood that happened, but the seismic, reality-shattering cataclysm waiting patiently, buried just beneath the thin veneer of our modern world.
We left off staring into the abyss, the chilling realization dawning that Atlantis wasn't gently drowned by rising water, but violently ripped apart by an energy source too vast, too ambitious, too utterly terrifying to be contained by mortal hands. The sheer scale of their engineering was not a triumph of science, but a colossal, hubristic insult to the fundamental dynamics of the cosmos itself. And the universe responded with a final, devastating blow. The key, the absolute terrifying linchpin of their entire civilization, was orichalcum, that legendary red-gold alloy described in the ancient texts. It was not mere precious metal. It was the planetary nervous system of Atlantis. This highly conductive, super-resonant substance was laced through every building, every vehicle, acting as a colossal, hypersensitive antenna, tuned precisely to the very heartbeat of Earth itself, the Schumann resonance.
They didn't need crude fossil fuels or dangerous splitting atoms. They simply harvested the natural electric symphony of the planet, the constant, gentle vibration that emanates from our world's core. But they amplified it, magnified that subtle planetary pulse until it became a roaring, captive tsunami of limitless energy, enough to power their legendary floating sky cities and propel subterranean hypertrains that effortlessly broke the sound barrier beneath the waves. Yet this spectacular planetary energy harvest was merely the baseline, the utterly pedestrian power source used for common necessities. The true, terrifying secret, the power that ultimately sealed their doom, lay deep within the central citadel, concealed beneath the highest peak of the island, where the elite architects of power conducted their grand, disastrous symphony. Imagine a monolithic crystal structure, not laboriously cut by Atlantean tools, but organically grown over millennia, radiating a cold, intense, bluish-white light that felt like staring directly into the controlled fury of a contained supernova. This was the Great Crystal, the primary nexus, the central repository for all collected orichalcum energy, acting as a cosmic-scale capacitor. This single object was constantly charged, constantly humming with the terrifying latent potential to rearrange molecules on a continental scale, to instantaneously terraform landscapes or even shift weather patterns globally. The Atlanteans, in their dazzling arrogance, had mastered the art of bioresonant energy manipulation. They could literally influence the power grid through sheer focus and collective intent, channeling their synchronized will through the orichalcum lattice to perform feats we would label as pure sorcery today, instantly bending gravity fields and purifying vast oceans of water into potable reserves. But the greatest minds of Atlantis suffered from the most dangerous affliction known to any advanced species: boredom with perfection. They sought to go beyond mere planetary harvesting. They wanted infinite, inexhaustible, consequence-free power, and they believed the ultimate answer lay in the forbidden space between realities, the etheric void, the zero-point energy of the vacuum itself.
They ambitiously christened this final reckless project the Vortex Engine. It was designed not to tap Earth's energy, but to pull raw creation potential directly from the very fabric of space-time, to fundamentally break the conservation of energy laws, and to steal the universe's ultimate potential for their own gain. This was no longer science. This was a direct, blasphemous act of theological defiance, and the fundamental physics of the universe responded with immediate, incomprehensible violence. The moment the Vortex Engine went live, reaching its catastrophic critical threshold, the meticulously engineered orichalcum grid, which was meant to be the stabilizer and conduit, instantly became a catastrophic, short-circuited lightning rod.
The Great Crystal, designed to stabilize the influx of energy, failed spectacularly, turning into a massive, uncontrollable focal point of dimensional chaos. Instead of gently siphoning vacuum energy, they created a localized, instantly expanding singularity, a massive structural tear in the foundational fabric of their homeland, a wound that ripped reality open. The immense instantaneous pressure differential caused by this interdimensional leakage did not result in a slow, mournful flood. It triggered a violent, geometrically destructive implosion. Imagine the entire continental shelf beneath Atlantis shattering and liquefying like cheap glass under the weight of an inverse star pressing down from above.
The speed of the sinking was so rapid, so devastatingly systemic, that it didn't allow time for organized escape or even a collective moment of panic. The civilization was simply erased from the surface of the globe in a microsecond. The Atlantean cataclysm was not a drowning. It was a total, systemic, planetary self-correction. But here is the true, terrifying continuity of the nightmare. The technology, the broken pieces of the Vortex Engine, the countless scattered fragments of highly charged orichalcum, they did not vanish into nothingness. They were merely buried, scattered across the deep, dark ocean floor, still humming silently with residual vacuum energy, waiting patiently. They are waiting for an unwary deep-sea explorer, a catastrophic geological shift, or perhaps a technologically advanced successor civilization to accidentally reactivate the latent, reality-shattering cataclysm that is still waiting patiently just beneath the thin veneer of our modern world. This is why the legends persist, why the deep ocean is so zealously guarded, because the greatest, most volatile power source ever devised remains active. A ticking dimensional bomb left behind by a civilization that dared to put its hand directly into the forbidden machinery of creation itself. And Part 7 must finally reveal the shadowy entities who have spent millennia trying to retrieve the pieces. The water boiled, the tectonic plates groaned, and when the dust finally settled, the greatest library of power the world had ever known was pulverized into deep-sea sediment. But the complete obliteration of Atlantis was never the end of the story. It was merely the terrifying, planet-sized reset button that launched the ultimate archaeological treasure hunt.
We are talking about artifacts that don't just grant control over electricity or communication. We are talking about geometry that forces reality to submit to the user's will. And these fragments, these divine splinters of creation, did not vanish when the continent descended. They were blasted across the globe by the sheer force of the energy feedback loop, embedding themselves deep in the Earth's crust, waiting for the moment they could be reactivated. This catastrophic dispersal was the only thing that saved the rest of humanity from instant secondary annihilation. But it created a problem far more insidious: a global market for planetary dominance. For millennia, whispers circulated among the most powerful and secretive cabals. The deep code was still accessible. This wasn't just about gold or oil. This was about the source code of the physical universe, locked inside glowing metallic shards and enormous petrified crystal data structures hidden across the continents. Who are these relentless hunters? They are known by many names: the Consortium, the Eye of Thoth, the Guardians of the Deep Code. But their objective is terrifyingly unified: reassemble the Atlantean grid and gain absolute technological supremacy over the human timeline. Imagine groups that have operated outside the light of documented history, funding every major deep-sea exploration, every unusual mountain excavation, not for dinosaur bones or ancient pottery, but for a single, unmistakable signature: the non-decaying isotopic frequency of orichalcum that defies known terrestrial physics.
This relentless search is the secret, true history behind every major military anomaly, every unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, sighting near sensitive areas, every unexplained energy spike detected by global monitoring systems. It's not always aliens. It's us, fighting a shadow war over the ruins of a self-destructed god nation. The most crucial fragments are not the metal ingots used for power conduit. They are the immense, carved quartz resonance nodes that acted as the primary hubs for channeling zero-point energy. When the main core failed, these nodes were ejected with such force they traveled faster than sound, surviving the crushing pressures of the ocean floor, only to be found in the most inaccessible places on Earth. One such node, rumored to be the heart of Poseidon's control, is allegedly buried beneath the ice shelf in Antarctica, locked in a time capsule of frozen history. An area which suddenly becomes extremely interesting to nations that never historically cared about the South Pole, triggering unprecedented levels of covert military buildup and scientific bases. Another key piece: a massive orichalcum focusing lens designed to amplify thought into physical action, is supposedly resting deep within the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean, guarded not by mythological kraken, but by the overwhelming 16,000 psi pressure that naturally isolates it from all but the most sophisticated, black-budget submersible technology.
This is where the story pivots from ancient tragedy to present danger, because the retrieval agents aren't just high-minded academics with shovels. They are geopolitical power brokers, using vast military resources and espionage networks to secure these relics, believing that whoever holds the full, reassembled grid can literally dictate the fundamental laws of the planet.
Think about the sudden, intense interest in regions like the Mediterranean seafloor and the deep Caribbean. It's not about finding old pirate ships or Phoenician trade routes. It's about mapping the residual energy signatures left behind by the collapsing crystal grid, searching for thermal and magnetic anomalies that defy conventional, measurable explanation.
The Bermuda Triangle, that legendary graveyard of ships and planes, is not a supernatural vortex created by ghosts. It is, according to the terrifying theories of the retrieval agents, a massive, unsealed wound in the planet's magnetic field, created by the very energy surge that shattered Atlantis and ripped a hole in space-time itself.
And those frequent, sudden disappearances, the ships that vanish without distress calls, the planes that disappear from radar in the blink of an eye. They are merely side effects, localized, brief ruptures in the dimensional fabric, created when one of the buried Atlantean power nodes briefly, momentarily, flickers back online due to seismic activity or tectonic plate stress.
The retrieval agents know this intimately. They are trying to stabilize and map that wound, not to save tourists, but to harness the raw, untamed power leaking out of it before a rival organization can. It's a resource war fought with satellites and highly classified deep-sea drones, where the ultimate prize is not territory, but the ability to rewrite the rules of physics.
If these groups succeed, they won't just rebuild a lost civilization. They will inevitably recreate the machine that tore the planet apart the first time, only this time armed with modern military ruthlessness. The catastrophic arrogance of the original Atlanteans is now being perfectly mirrored in the desperate, ruthless ambition of modern humanity's deepest, darkest organizations.
Every time a major technological leap occurs, a quantum computing breakthrough that seems impossible, a new radical propulsion system announced by a secretive aerospace firm, the question must be asked, is this genuinely new innovation? Or is this the successful deciphering of a single, recovered, reverse-engineered Atlantean data crystal?
The greatest secret being hidden from the public is that much of our modern, cutting-edge science is merely the accidental salvage and study of debris. The unparalleled speed of information transfer, the non-linear efficiency of energy generation, it all points back to the orichalcum equation. We are living on borrowed time, playing with fragments of a planetary bomb we don't fully understand, overseen by shadowy entities who believe they are infinitely smarter than the civilization that perished beneath the waves. The retrieval effort is not a mission of historical salvage. It is a ticking clock counting down to the next, final planetary catastrophe.
And that leads us to the most dangerous piece of all, the ultimate, most coveted prize they are all seeking, the thing that survived the Great Destruction almost completely intact and holds the key to the ultimate power, a device known only as the Chronos Key, hidden not beneath the sea, but in plain sight.
The Chronos Key, they named it, with a chilling simplicity that belied its truly terrifying function. It was not merely a switch or a lever for the orichalcum matrix. It was the master tuning fork, capable of vibrating the very strings of the universe at frequencies previously reserved only for the gods themselves. For generations we have been told the Atlanteans perfected energy, but that was merely the primer for their true, staggering ambition, the absolute dominion over linear time itself.
The orichalcum grid, powered by the Earth's own magnetic heart, allowed them to manipulate matter and gravity with trivial ease, building their impossible structures and flying their skyships. But the Chronos Key was the theoretical pinnacle, the ultimate failsafe designed to transcend even mortality and consequence, allowing the user to essentially rewind localized events or peer into probability streams with perfect clarity. It was the ultimate cheat code for existence, and its activation meant the laws of physics were merely suggestions.
Imagine the sheer cosmic arrogance. These beings, standing on the precipice of perfect, eternal existence, decided that even the natural progression of the future was too slow for them. They didn't just want power. They wanted omnipresence, the ability to sculpt reality retroactively. The key was constructed from a perfectly synthesized, infinitely stable form of refined crystal, laced with strands of frozen etheric energy, a substance so rare and volatile that even the most brilliant Atlantean engineers approached it with trembling reverence, knowing they held the fate of the planet in their hands.
When the final catastrophic experiment took place, the moment the orichalcum grid overloaded and the tectonic plates began to scream beneath the crushing burden of misused power, it wasn't a sudden localized explosion of raw plasma that doomed them. No. It was a fracture in causality itself, an instantaneous, impossible moment when the past, present, and future violently collided in the central reactor chamber deep beneath the capital city. This was the moment of their undoing.
The Chronos Key was supposed to stabilize the temporal surge, but instead, due to a critical miscalculation in the harmonic dampeners, it acted as a gigantic, uncontrolled amplifier. It twisted the energy back onto itself in a vortex of devastating non-existence, creating a momentary, focused black hole of pure chaos that ripped through the hyperdimensional fabric holding their continent together. The very definition of space tore open. It did not sink to the ocean floor with the remnants of the civilization. It was hurled, catapulted by the temporal distortion, out of the immediate disaster zone, landing somewhere utterly unexpected, camouflaged by millions of years of human misdirection and subsequent geological decay. And here is the true, staggering terror of the secret.
The Chronos key is not buried in some forgotten sub-oceanic tomb or guarded by spectral beasts deep in the trenches. It is believed by some French but highly dedicated researchers, those who have dared to follow the energy signatures, that the key is actually the underlying physical blueprint for the greatest enduring religious and mythological symbols of our modern world. It didn't just hide, it became foundational to human belief systems.
It was misinterpreted as a source of divine or mystical grace, rather than the piece of temporal machinery it truly is. Consider the pervasive legends of the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, or even the mythical Fountain of Youth, all described as objects or places capable of granting everlasting life or instant perfect knowledge. What if these were not allegories, but just corrupted, spiritualized memories of the Chronos key's actual function, an object so powerful, its sheer existence fundamentally rewrote humanity's understanding of mortality and fate? The most compelling, chilling theory places the physical location of the key not beneath the waves, but within the structure of a colossal, recognized monument that has stood sentinel for millennia, silently gathering the cosmic residue of the disaster. Its perfect geometric alignment with the planet's surviving energy nodes acts as a constant, subtle broadcast tower, ensuring the dormant orichalcum crystals scattered globally remain charged, even if only faintly. It is a silent repeater.
This specific monument, which we dare not name yet for fear of inciting a truly global panic, has been meticulously studied, photographed, and crawled over by millions of oblivious tourists. Yet its ultimate terrifying power remains unseen. It is perfectly disguised as mere ancient architecture and engineering marvels. It is the perfect hiding spot, something so familiar, so commonplace in our history books, that no one would ever suspect it is the central control mechanism for a civilization dead for 12,000 years, still ticking like a highly sophisticated time bomb.
The Atlanteans were masters of misdirection, ensuring that their ultimate weapon, should it fall into the wrong hands, or the hands of their own less disciplined descendants, would be rendered inert by sheer incomprehension. Only a specific harmonic frequency, a unique master code known only to the highest echelon of their priesthood, the ones who foresaw the approaching end, can truly activate the key and reinitiate the full, terrifying power of the orichalcum grid. And that frequency, that specific sequence of light, vibration, and sound, is the final, deadly piece of the puzzle. It wasn't written down in stone or crystal for fear of discovery. It was encoded, passed down through whispers and specific, ritualized movements, hidden deep within the very structure of human language, ancient music, and astronomical alignments. It is the secret song of Atlantis, and modern archaeology and acoustic physics are slowly, painstakingly beginning to hum the first terrifying, world-ending notes. If the Chronos key is activated without the proper safeguards and understanding, it won't just unlock ancient power, It will likely restore the temporal rift that originally swallowed Atlantis, potentially pulling our own stable present timeline directly into the chaotic horizon of their final, arrogant experiment. The question is no longer if the key can be found, but who will find the master code first, and if they truly understand that unlocking eternal life might mean erasing the entire world we know. The race against time has begun, fueled by whispers of a hyperdimensional device hidden in plain sight, waiting for its terrifying song to be played.